And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Tuesdays with Peter, and I'm Peter. I go through a series of kind of a focus over the course of the last year and a half. The focus that we're currently working with is the inspired learning model. The inspired learning model is something that I co-created with my partner back in 1996. And it basically is a creating a learning environment that reverses or substitutes the critique-based learning, which is ubiquitous in the world. My experience throughout my starting in kindergarten, primary school, middle school, high school, university, corporate training, adult education has all been critique-based learning. In other words, we want you to do this, or we want you to know this, or we want you to memorize this. And then whenever I would do that, the professor, the teacher, the parent would say, okay, so no, this isn't right, this part here. So go back and study that. That's not correct. 2 and 2 does not equal 5. So go back and figure out, from your book, from your textbook, what 2 plus 2 is. All right. So what I call that is its critique-based approach to learning. It is taking the things that a learner has done incorrectly and pointing to that part. I always use the example of, like you get your little arithmetic sheet back in, second grade or third grade, and there's 2 wrong on, 10 examples, right? 10 that you did for your homework assignment. And it's 2 is wrong. What's written on the top? -2. In what color? I don't know why, it's always red. It's universal red. Teachers use red for what's not right. The approach that we take in the inspired learning model is use the exact same example. Okay, 2 were not correct. But instead of putting -2 on the top, let's put +8. Let's put a gold star next to all those that were correct. Does it take longer to do this? Yes, for the teacher, it takes longer. But here's the payoff. The rapid learning and assimilation of a new skill, a new topic, a new behavior is 200 to 300% more than in the critique-based model. 200 to 300% more learning takes place and faster, because we take the opportunity to reinforce the things that the student is already getting right, and they go, oh, okay. Let me try again. I can do better the next time, right? There's an internal motivation that takes place, or actually I would call it internal inspiration. That's what we call it, the inspired learning model. And they go, do they know that there's room for improvement? Absolutely. Do they have to be told which ones are wrong? Not really, especially when you can highlight those things that they got right. Wow, I got 8 right. That's fantastic. I wasn't sure about this one. 3 + 4 = 7, but now I can see that. Okay, the teacher said that was right. Hip hip hooray. Yay me. I'll remember that. So it's turning the learning environment upside down. I can also tell you, I've been doing this for 26 years now in our coach training, Coach for Life coach training. And coaches assimilate a massive amount of competencies more rapidly, more correctly, more assuredly by acknowledging for what they got right. Now, is there room for improvement? Yes. Is there developmental things? Yes. But for every developmental thing that I might point out and say, so if you were to reword this particular sentence or this particular question to be a more powerful or an open-ended question, what would that sound like? Okay, so that might be a developmental thing. They can't wait to get back and do that because they've been acknowledged for the 8, 10, 12 things that they've done really, really well. at the beginning of learning, learning is messy. If I'm not familiar with that particular subject matter or that particular level of behavioral mastery, as it is in coaching, I'm not quite sure what I did right and what I did wrong and where I got off track, and it's just all a big muddle. And that's why I say learning is iterative. It's repetitive. If you've ever learned a musical instrument, my guess is, unless you are a child prodigy that just automatically gets on a piano and plays Chopin, the first time brilliantly, it takes practice. The same thing with this is that an individual gets acknowledged for what they got right. They're gonna, oh, let me try it again. Let me try it again. Put me back in. Let me attempt. Stunning, absolutely stunning. So anyhow, so let me get my my PowerPoint up here. The inspired learning model. Today we're going to be talking about the subject matter. So there's 7 elements to the inspired learning model. We're going to spend a couple of weeks, this week and next week, on the subject matter. The subject matter is what are we teaching? What are we focusing on? What does the learner want? What does the learner come to learn? So this could be arithmetic. This could be a different language. This could be a musical instrument. Like I said, in our case, for the last 26 years, I've been teaching professionals a professional set of competencies to become a professional coach. And it's very different than mentoring or mothering or leading or teaching or a whole bunch of other things that coaching does not replace. And so we're going to talk about the first part of subject matter is what do I want to teach? What am I excited about? What am I passionate about personally in order to teach? Because I believe that the facilitator has a huge part to play in inspiring the excitement, the passion, the sheer joy of X. Now, you can be teaching art, but don't teach art unless you're passionate about art. So this will be kind of a little tutorial on some of the makeup of the subject matter and how much of that do you need, etc. So that's what we're going to explore today. Subject matter is a clear body of work. It can be any topic, process, or skill. It can be any topic. Oh, I got that. It is organized in a way that is demonstratable, observable, and acknowledgeable. I don't even know if that's a word, acknowledgeable, but I can see if the student has understood it. I can see and hear them demonstrate it appropriately. And therefore, I can then acknowledge them for, wow, great job, Peter. You asked open-ended questions. You allowed the client to set the agenda. You were not directive. You allowed the client to choose what path they wanted to take or how deep they want to go into the topic. Hip, hip, hooray. And I can acknowledge the student for all those things. So that's why these are tangible behaviors or knowledge that I can tell, yep, you got it. Keep up the good work. Subject matter. British, can you read this for us? The focus of the learning process.
Yeah, sure. The focus of the learning process, any body of knowledge can be placed into the context of the inspired learning environment. Think of the inspired learning environment as the frame around the picture. The subject matter is the picture or the content.
Beautiful. So I talk about a container, and the container is, in other words, a safe space for the learner to learn. Okay, so when I take out the prospect of being critiquing historically, or still practice, most of this in the world tends to shut the learner down. It's kind of like the proverbial, teacher in the front of the room, very authoritative, says, okay, so what's the date of the 1812 war? And Johnny's all excited in the front and says 1800. And his teacher says, no, you're so stupid. Anybody else? And everybody else is going, right, ducking for cover. So the safety in the room is tantamount. So that's the frame. That's the frame that they walk into. The subject matter is actually the topic of why did we show up here together? What am I wanting to learn? What am I excited about in learning? Is that picture, the middle part. So I'm going to ask those of you that are on the live Zoom with me to type in the chat box. Let me get my chat box up here so I can actually see it. And type in a subject matter that you have been a educator for, a facilitator of learning is what I call it in this new paradigm, from the past. I taught leadership at work. I taught delegation at work. I taught my kids how to ride a bicycle. I mean, what are some of the topics that you have actually been a facilitator of learning? And just kind of, I just get them into the room. So type them into the chat box, just 1 or 2 words, the types of different topics. And let me see if I can get that. Okay, so Sonny's saying finance for non-finance people. Yeah, exactly. What else? What other kinds of things have you taught? Have you been a facilitator of learning? Again, this applies formally and informally. To formal classroom, yep. It's been used in universities by professors. It's been used by teachers and educators in formal classroom settings. It's been used in adult learning. It's been used in corporate training. And at home as a parent. I think every parent is a learning facilitator. And it could be as something as simple as walking, right, at 12 months or 18 months or 6 months, whatever the child was, and trying to take their first steps. And you're encouraging them. Woohoo! I see Denny Stockdale coming in from YouTube, taught computer programming at college and corporate level. Beautiful. Good to see you, Denny. Good to have you here. It's been a while since you and I have chatted. I teach and help daughter to speak English. Yeah, perfect. A second language. And again, a great opportunity for all the pronunciation and all the vocabulary and all the grammar and all the other things that go into speaking a language is to catch them doing something brilliantly. Wow, that was exactly the right tense of that verb. I mean, that was just awesome. Woohoo! And now the child, or the adult, as the case may be, adult child, goes, okay, oh, I'm catching on here. All right, let me try again. Right. Rita says peer group dynamics for boarding school students. Yeah. God bless him, man. Peer group dynamics for high school kids. Woohoo. Yeah. Doing the heavy lifting on that one, I'm sure. But again, beautifully, a beautiful topic to be teaching using this methodology. And people learn faster because I'm catching them doing the things that are, if you will, correct or right about that topic and reinforcing it In the old style of critique, I missed that opportunity. It was a wasted opportunity because I'm only focused on what they didn't do well. And the other 8 things that they did well go sort of unnoticed. So this, again, the new learner that's confused going, well, I don't know if they'll try it again. And it's never been reinforced. So they have to do it again and again and again and again. And then finally, you know, they'll sort out that is part of the competency of blank, of group dynamic, of, you know, computer programming, of, you know, how to ride a bicycle. Sonny's got another one here, how to meditate. Yeah, beautiful one, stunning one. And again, a great place to reinforce, wow, you did, you know, 8 out of the 10 things that are really important for deep meditation. I hear that you did that. I observed the quietness, I observed the centeredness, I observed the intentionality, whatever those things are in terms of that particular topic, that subject matter. How does one meditate? It may sound easy, just close your eyes and don't think of anything. And then of course I close my eyes and I'm thinking, okay, so am I doing it right? Oh, I'm thinking about something, so I must be doing it wrong. And then get into a whirl of, ooh, yeah, okay. So excellent. And any of those topics are great topics to train, to teach, particularly if you're passionate about. So we're going to talk about that in a second here. Let's go to that. And as you have questions as they're coming up, go ahead and put those in the chat box, please, again. Now, I talk about exploring how to receive the subject matter. This is for you as the subject matter expert, the facilitator. What do I choose to teach? What do I choose to focus on? What do I choose to offer for students to come into and be in the presence of this inspired learning model? Inquiries that might give you clues into what subject you are already teaching. What do you love spending time reading about? Where do you go to watch YouTubes? You know, what topics do you put into the YouTube to see how others are doing X, Y, Z? What do you do in your spare time? And I can hear the mothers already saying, I don't have any spare time. There's no such thing as me time. But what do you wonder about? What would you wish that you were able to do or have time to do? These are the topics that I'm going to encourage you to allow them to flourish within you. Have them blossom. I am passionate about, again, could be anything. Fashion, cooking, going back into a career at midlife, changing my relationship with my adult children now, getting ready for retirement. I mean, there's so many things that that are present at various stages of life. And pick the one that you're passionate about. You know, put a program together to support others that are also interested in that topic. A few more questions that you would ask is when you have an opportunity to join a discussion that most interests you, what are they talking about? What kind of discussion group? What kind of social media group? What kind of, it could be needlepoint, it could be woodworking, it could be the love of nature, it could be gardening, it could be leadership, it could be, I mean, there's just thousands of topics. And I'm going to invite you to go to the one that you are most excited about, the most passionate about. Don't just pick one because, yeah, I think there's a big demand for gardening, but frankly, you don't like it. Don't teach that. Let somebody else that's passionate about gardening teach gardening. Or are you currently teaching, mentoring, facilitating for free? All right, so I've heard several of you, and in the last question, I do this at a boarding school. I do this as for an NGO, non-governmental organization. And what subject matter is it that you bring to those organizations for free? Because you just categorically love it. one of the things that I'm also going to share is that whatever I teach, I learn more about, period. Whatever I teach, okay, I've been teaching coaching for 26 years. I still continue to learn more about coaching because of that, because of the questions I get from my students, because of their insights. And I go, huh, I never thought about it that way. That's very interesting. And yes, that has been my experience. So I am, as a facilitator, open up to being inspired by my students. Okay. Now, this is more the construct of the topic. I have a lot of people that I teach how to actually put a workshop together. And one of the topics that always comes up is, well, how much material do I need? How much preparation do I need? How many exercises do I need? And here's a rule, my rule of thumb: for every hour of quote teaching, sharing about the subject matter, you only need about 15 minutes of material. And a lot of times less. So there is again a switch between let me show you the next quote here. The amount of material that is necessary for us to supply diminishes drastically when we create a learning environment instead of a teaching environment. I like that sink in for a second. In inspired learning, I am creating a learning environment that allows the learners to go to their area of excitement, their area of curiosity, their edge of learning, as opposed to a teaching environment where I'm teaching 100% of the time. Okay, so in that light, let's go. Okay, I've been quote teaching now for the last 20 minutes, right? So now I'm going to open it up for questions, exploration, insights that you all have about this concept of a subject matter that you bring to others, and you are creating a learning environment for them to learn about that, create exercises for it, have them go through the visceral experience of X. Again, my case, coaching, could be cooking, could be needlepoint, could be leadership, it could be delegation, it could be all of those different types of topics that they have an opportunity to experiment with in a safe space, safe classroom, and then also out in life. Okay, so one of the assignments for the class is to go out and if it's delegation, to delegate, go to your to-do list, which is pages long, and pick one thing and delegate it. Oh yeah, but I'm afraid because they're not going to do it right. They're not going to do it the way I want it done. Yeah, I know, but that's part of the learning process. Is how do you get ready to delegate it and use some of the principles that we've talked about in this class of how to delegate. Yeah. All right, so we'll talk about that. Let me open it up right now in terms of, does that make sense in terms of, let me ask an inquiry. In your mind, what's the difference between a learning environment and a teaching environment? That's the subject. What's the difference between a teaching environment and a learning environment? Who'd like to comment on that?
Yeah, Peter, may I?
Yes, please. Reddish?
Yeah.
Let me
Okay.
get you up here. There you
go. Thank you. So actually quite a few, if I have to talk about the differences, but two which I would like to mention up front and which I think are play a big role to differentiate between a learning environment and a teaching environment. One is about, I feel a learning environment is driven by the learners and not the teacher. I don't go in with an agenda of this is what has to be taught today. I'll have a framework, I'll have something in my mind, but how it is to be given, and if there is anything less or anything more which can be taken by the learners. I think
Beautiful.
once into that environment, they will drive it. And even in the space that I mentioned about, which is peer group dynamics, I think that is what I experienced. That even if I went in and I saw other people around me, my colleagues, there was a fixed mindset. This is what the learners must learn,
Right.
right? And
Right.
that's where it takes. As soon as they get the feel of it, also they say we don't want to learn it.
Yeah, or there's a subliminal, I don't want to cram down my throat.
Yeah.
So
And you
there's
give
a
them
there's
sorry.
a major shift of power that goes from the teacher over to the student, from the facilitator of learning over to the inspired learner, is what we call the learner in this model.
Yeah.
And the inspired learner takes over. They say, wow, I've never thought about this. Does this work with siblings, right? With my brothers and sisters? There's a dominance there. I felt it from my older sister. I hate it. And now I end up doing the same thing with my younger brother, right? So they have all kinds of different connections and synapses going off. And now it becomes their topic.
Yes.
And I facilitate learning. I don't. Okay, no, that's not right. Let me jam some more things down your throat here. Very different environment.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And the second point, which is another very important, which I think, and again, my own experience is that, so if it's me as a teacher, and there are 10 students I have, I won't even call them learners, students I have. If I go in a teaching environment, it is a 1 and 10.
Yeah.
So there's one person teaching and 10 people, 10 people trying to be taught. And if I go into a learning environment, there are actually 11 people who are learning from each other.
Wow. Couldn't have said it better myself.
As a teacher who went in as a teacher is also learning from those 10.
So what mindset or attitude do you have to have as the quote teacher, traditional teacher coming into that classroom or that group of individuals? What mindset do you have to shift to for that to happen, so that there's 11 students now, not just 10?
So one thing is, there is more that I can learn.
Yes.
And another very important point, which I feel me being a facilitator as a teacher, when I went into that space for me to have, was that there is learning already on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a generation gap. Those are my students. So there's already some learning there which has to be shared. And it's not only me who knows everything. That helped me a lot, because I'm sorry to say, I've seen a lot of that with a lot of teachers.
Yeah. And,
right.
and they expect themselves to know more than everybody else in a room, or all the other people in the room added up, and then some more, because they have to. They have to show their power. They have to show their intelligence. They have to show their whatever. But yes, there is one of the key ones that you just mentioned that I love is that I, as a fellow human being in this space, okay, so now there's 11 of us in your example, I have more to learn about this topic.
True.
What a great mindset that is, as opposed to the professor that's standing in front of 250 people in a gallery and pontificating, okay, so here's the right formula, and here's the right history, and here's what the kings did, and here's what the feudal age was all about, or whatever the hell they're talking about down there, which I'm completely ignoring. I am a fellow learner. Stunning.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited about learning more from each of you, your perspectives, the new paradigm, because I did not grow up in the digital age as you are doing. So how much more do I have to learn about everything through your eyes, your perspective? Stunning, absolutely stunning. Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Who else wants to talk about this one? The difference for you when you've been either experiencing a learning environment as opposed to a teaching environment, or when you've been doing that as the, I'm going to call you the inspired learning facilitator.
Peter, I just want to highlight one point which I feel is different.
I can barely hear, I think it's Sunny, but I can barely hear you, Sunny.
Just 1 second. Yeah, is it better?
Go ahead and, I think so, yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight one key factor which is different in a learning environment. I think everybody present has a voice or is allowed to have a voice equally and without ridicule.
Ah, yes. And if you would, in a teaching environment, how would that student be treated or show up or expected to be expected to show up?
So in a teaching environment, I think like I can give an example, and this is usually what happens is you have a second or a third teacher, which is the monitor or the prefect or the good student, who
Yeah.
then starts to kind of teach others. And so everybody is not heard. So one, there is a dominance by a few.
Mm.
And the second, what happens is that there is a, if like there is somebody who's confident, who's able to still speak, or kind of breaks open and says what is in the mind, it is not easily digested or is ridiculed. And that creates a block for somebody who could have spoken really something meaningful, or whatever, like meaningful or not meaningful, but they don't speak or express. So a teaching environment kind of restricts the free expression. And even it restricts the thought process in the mind for people to think outside the box.
I think that's bang on. I do. There's a narrower point of view that gets highlighted in a teaching environment. And if you agree with me, then great, then you get bandwidth to speak. But anybody that is outside of that particular correct bandwidth, those voices don't get heard. Sometimes it's overt, sometimes it is by the nature of the teacher shutting people down or not calling on them. So yes, the kind of the bottom line for me that I'm hearing from you, Sunny, is that it's a richer environment when we have everybody participating and sharing their point of view or how they would apply it in their life, as opposed to a teaching environment that here's the one way you need to do it, and here's the one way you need to apply it. And when you do this, you'll get 100 on the test or an A. If you don't say this, then you're not going to get an A. It's like tyrannical. Can be. Not all teaching environments, but a lot of them that I've experienced personally. So I'm gonna one additional question on Sunny is, so what? Like what's the advantage to the students, the learners that have the ability to be within a learning environment as opposed to a teaching environment?
I think the advantage is they find their voice, and they are okay with who they are, and they can self-correct rather than have a block of not doing that. So it's a motivation to self-correct and still be themselves, vis-a-vis following or just not doing things because they were kind of not allowed that expression. And what I
Mhm.
also feel is that you were saying tyrannical. I thought about army, and then I thought about hierarchical culture,
Yeah.
because what we promote in a teaching environment is who's first, who's second, who's third, which is a
Yeah.
hierarchy.
Mhm.
While in corporations, we have clearly seen that the hierarchy has now moved into a network. So you kind of figure out that everybody is good in their own way, how to use that instead of say, okay, you are first or second. So I
Wow.
think that's what comes in a learning environment. And that's the big advantage, that you don't have to see that did I come first in this, but how your way of applying it can be useful is the focus on. So that's a big advantage.
Wow. I go with that one seep in because I think that's significant, and I'm not sure I've ever thought about that. But it reinforce what I think I'm hearing you say, and I think I definitely agree with that, is the idea of it allows every student to communicate their own strengths, their own abilities, their own way of applying it in a way that works for them. And to be honored for that, and to be acknowledged for that, as opposed to there's only one way, it's my way or the highway. Right? Which is a hierarchical thing that you're talking about that shows up in certainly military, and I experienced that firsthand. But also old corporations that had that hierarchy. I'm going to say old corporations. I know it still exists a great deal around the world. But I think you're right. It's breaking down into, we're a network of contributors. It's not a top down being told what to do every day. It's, we need your gifts and talents. We need your unique abilities. We need your unique approach. We need your unique focus and attitude to bring to this, because we're servicing people that are different, every single one of them. So how do we build that into our service network? How do we build that into our communications? How do we build that into our customer care and so on? Beautiful. Anything else you want to add to that, Sunny?
No, I think I like to learn from others now in this learning environment.
British is up there clapping and cheering you on. Woohoo! Yes, yes, yes. All right. Saraswati, love to get your thoughts on this whole concept of a learning environment vis-a-vis a teaching environment, and advantages that you've experienced perhaps yourself or that you think are important.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think I've learned a lot today from all the experiences that Ritesh and Sunny have shared so far. But just to add on to that, as some of you are aware, I've changed cities, and my daughter has moved from one curriculum to another curriculum, and for me, the learning environment and teaching environment experience has been sitting with her and doing a maths homework. And because the curriculum has changed and I have learned maths in a particular way, she's joined mid-year. So the approach of doing it is very different. And, when she's sat at home and we've done homework together, there are concepts that she's not understood. And I've tried to teach her in a particular way. And I've realized that there's always been a friction when I've tried to teach, but when I've heard her out, and there are so many different ways of learning maths, and there are newer concepts, and there's Vedic maths, Q maths, just Kumon maths, and anyways, I mean, that's all the additional, but the school curriculum is different, and she's learning maths in a different way. And I finally had to figure a way of just stepping back and saying, let her teach me the way she is learning. And then if there is something that I can support her with, I would rather do that than kind of say, no, I have learned it this way, and that's the way I'm going to teach you, because their way of arriving at addition or multiplication or even in terms of currencies, because they're doing more dollars and less rupees, has kind of been a bit challenging for me also, because she's doing her calculations very differently than we did. So yeah, I guess that's the first thing that came out for me in this conversation, and that example, that the minute I switched from teaching to being open to learn a different way, the atmosphere changed, the dynamics changed. She felt more comfortable questioning. She felt more comfortable even being able to ask the teacher and being okay with the fact that I don't know. Can you help me? Can you support me? Vis-a-vis being closed about it, and saying, I don't know, so I'm just going to, shut myself into a shell and be the backbencher. But just creating an environment where you're saying that, hey, it's okay, and there are different ways of approaching the same thing, has helped her blossom as an individual, which I think for me has been great, because it's helped her settle into a new environment much faster.
Wow. 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 So congratulations, mom, teacher, tutor, holder of space for your daughter. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the other thing that you brought up again that gets reinforced now again is the idea of you are helping to bolster her curiosity. Now, I don't think that's the exact word to use, but she's able and willing to go back to the teacher and say, can you help me understand this, right? Where if she's been told 10 times before, just do it this way, and she's not getting it that way, then you shut the student down. You shut off the learner, because they're afraid now to get those dirty looks from the teacher, or the disappointed look from mom, or the whatever. But now the curiosity is, of course you can get this. I know you're going to get it. It was just maybe a different approach, or you ask the teacher for this, that, or the other. And again, the differentiation between the learning environment versus the teaching environment is, look, I only teach this one way. I've been doing it for 50 years. You too will learn this. Just buckle down and concentrate, blah, 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 which is not helpful at all. But the learning environment is, all right, well, let's take a look at this. And the ability for you to say, wow, she's learning it differently than I was taught it, a few years back. And be open to that and say, okay. Night and day. We are encouraging the learner to learn. We're encouraging the learner to explore. We're encouraging the learner to ask questions. We're encouraging the learner to share what they understand and what they don't understand. All of that is okay in learning. Nobody learns something that's very sophisticated the first time they try to do it, period. You have to try again, you have to try again, you try again, you try again, and you start, oh, it's starting to kind of shake into place. Oh, that's not so hard. I can do that. So you're building up the attitude from the learner standpoint of, I'm a really good learner. I'm not stupid. I have the capacity to be able to learn this. It's just confusing right now. Well, yeah, all learning is confusing initially for everybody about everything. It's just the nature of it. And let me share this with my observation in terms of this, is that human beings are innately curious. You cannot stop a human being to learn. Now, I also say you can retard their learning process by being critical, but you cannot stop them from learning. It may take them 5 years to learn something that they could have learned maybe in a year in a more accepting environment, but it is impossible. If I have to say to my class sometimes when we're talking about this, okay, I want everybody stop learning everything for the next day. You're not allowed to learn anything tonight. And they start laughing. It's like, well, you just can't do that. Because we have curious minds, we have curious brains. We are connected to an environment, whether we're learning about leadership or mathematics or animals or relationships or organizations or different foods or languages or whatever. The human brain is going to be learning for a lifetime. And so how can I add to that? And you've done it beautifully. Beautiful. Saraswati, what last word from you? What's the advantage to your daughter for having that approach, for you to be a fellow learner alongside her?
I think I'm learning along with her, like you last said, and I just want to create a non-judgmental environment and allow her to feel free to question and learn and grow and be open to experimenting and trying out new stuff and not be scared of failing and not giving up, because we've experimented with hobbies in the past, and I've realized that given the kind of teacher she's had, she's dropped off on easier, in my perspective, easier hobbies, which could have been more interesting for her, but she's stuck around with the tougher ones purely because of the environment and the teacher that she's had. And I'm seeing a big shift now, especially with this new environment and this new way of teaching, of her being receptive and okay with, holding on and not giving up too quickly.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for being a great inspired learning facilitator.
Thank you, Peter. I want to acknowledge you for sharing your wisdom with me and for allowing me to use that. Thank you.
Most welcome. Most welcome. All right, just a couple more things before we wrap up then. And that is write down the processes, skills, conceptual truths that lie within your own journey. The things that you will become an educator, teacher, trainer, facilitator of learning for, most of that's going to be autobiographical. It's something that you, like I say, have enjoyed. You're passionate about it. You're excited about it. You want to share this excitement about this particular topic with others. And so start looking back at the skills that are necessary to do this well. Okay. The greatest challenge is to whittle down what fits into a learning structure available to you or one that you are creating. Now, what I mean by that is this learning environment going to be a 1-hour workshop on Zoom, for example, and that's it, 1 hour? Is it going to be an 8-week workshop, maybe an hour a week for 8 weeks? Maybe it's a 4-hour continuing education class that you teach. And it's maybe on a Saturday morning from 8 o'clock in the morning till noon. Is it a 1-year certification program, and so on and so forth, right? So the amount of learning that can take place within X amount of time is one of the considerations for what kind of exercises, what kind of subject matter competencies, and we're going to be talking about that all next week. So please come back. We'll be talking about what is a competency. What are the competencies that are necessary to do high school mathematics, calculus, algebra, geometry? What are the skills, knowledge, things that you need to have to be a professional coach? Because there's a lot of unlearning in order to learn the new way or the new mindset for this new topic. So we'll get more into that next week, defining the competencies. How do you articulate those competencies? What does it cover? All stay tuned. Stay tuned. It's most people have not done that in their lifetime, is figured out the competencies of what they're teaching. because it's easy for us as a teacher to come in, and if they're doing it wrong, it's obvious that's wrong. Great, but that retards the learning process, as opposed to picking up the competencies that they are doing and say, that was a perfect example of asking an open-ended question, again, in coaching, right? As opposed to a closed-end question or a directive question. That was a great example right there. And then the methodology of bringing it to the students to experiment. Sometimes it's talking about it in dyads. Sometimes it's an exercise of actually doing that particular thing that you're training. Again, in case of coaching, then break them up into dyads. Student A, learner A, coaches learner B, and then switch. Learner B coaches learner A. Give them an outline, an incredibly simple outline to start with. How did it go? Give them the experience of, it was hard for me not to jump in and give advice. This is one I always hear, right? But it's through their experience that they appreciate that and go, oh yeah, when I didn't give advice, then they were able to figure it out for themselves, and it just went so much better, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the designing of the workshop itself, or the curriculum. All right. Got about 8 minutes left here. Let me just finish up. Facilitation is not a hierarchical relationship. It's not hierarchical. It's a dance of joining, merging, and living the subject matter from a place of innocence and freshness. I think both Sunny, I think everybody actually commented on that. I am a fellow learner. If there's 10 students in the room and I'm there as a facilitator of learning, there's 11 of us that are learning. We may be at different stages of learning. We may be at different stages of mastery. Fair enough. But I too am a learner. And so this is, again, it's one of the difference between a teaching environment, which is hierarchical. I'm the professor, thank you very much. My word is it's law. This is the way it is. If you want to get it right on the test, then you'll answer it this way. Okay, that's hierarchical. We're abandoning that for the sake of I am a fellow inquisitive, curious learner, right along with you. And I heard perspectives today that I hadn't heard before. And that was like, woohoo. My brain got expanded. Now that's cool. All right. Just a quick thing on next week. Next week is week 4 of the 10 series. We're going to still be on subject matter, but next week will be about the competencies. What is a competency? How do you create a competency or articulate a competency? And then what do you do with that once you've articulated it? Okay. So do stay tuned for next week. So with that, let me just come back, get rid of my PowerPoint. Vivek, I see that you're here, but you haven't said much. Would you like to weigh in on anything that we've talked about today in terms of the inspired learning facilitator?
Coach, am I audible? Because I've been losing connection off.
You're definitely audible.
The word chime came to me, which is why I sort of posted that. And I'm probably referring to a question that you maybe asked 10 minutes ago about why an inspired learning environment was better than different, from a structured top-down hierarchical environment. And I feel it's the relationship between, the difference is that if I were a circle or a ball, the typical learning environment would be outside in. Whereas in an inspired learning environment, there's a large factor of inside out. Because if I'm inspired, then I express, I speak, the individual speaks, and they keep chiming in. And when they're chiming in, then, it's like bells ringing for them inside, rather than, they making sure that they've got the point that the teacher is saying. So I don't know if this is making any sense, but that's what came to me.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you. And it's one of the reasons I intentionally use inspired as instead of motivated. Motivation for me is somebody from the outside threatening me or promising me, it's kind of like the biscuit in front of the donkey, the carrot in front of the donkey. That's an external stimuli. Inspired is something that I'm feeling from the inside of me. I'm excited about internally. It's like you can't hold me back. So that concept of can I touch that part of the learner? Can I draw that out? Because it's there. It's in every single human being. Like I said, I believe that learning is innate. That I'm always curious about me and my surroundings, what's affecting me. That comes from the inside out, and I create an environment for that. That to stoke that. It's like a little flame or ember inside of a human being, and when I can be the billows, in other words, that pushes air towards that ember, it turns into a flame, turns into a higher level heat, literally. The same thing in learning when it's from the inside out. So thank you for that. I think that's it. Go ahead, Vivek. Yeah.
No, sorry, just one more image, as it were. In a conventional teaching approach, it would be, sit down and learn. And I imagine there would be a bunch of, I love crows. So imagine a bunch of crows sitting down and teacher crow, telling them and instructing them. And inspired learning would be, fly and you'll know on your own. So there's that huge difference between, the spirited, or rather, something being still, and the other is, one learning to fly on one's own and being in motion.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful imagery. It reminds me of the metaphor of if an elephant has a shackle on one of their feet early life, and they stake it into the ground, and he tries to move and he can't move because he's shackled with this thing. Later in life, my understanding is that you put a shackle on an elephant, it doesn't even need to be staked, but they won't move because now I've trained them not to move. I think that same thing in terms of this external confinement that happens a lot. And again, I'm not casting stones at all teachers. I've had some amazing teachers during my lifetime, but those that have helped open me up have honored what I'm excited about. In other words, I didn't have to do a project on Mexico. I had to do a project on one of the countries in Central America. So it's like they gave me the choice of picking one. This is like in 6th grade. And I picked, I don't know why, Honduras. I think I liked the way that sounded. And I made a little project and, what were the industries of Honduras and so on. But there are teachers that, again, can appeal to that internal flame, that internal inquisitiveness, and stoke it. Give it room to grow, give it room to expand, as opposed to the tyrannical, you will do it this way. Using Saraswati's example of, this is the way I learn mathematics, this is the way that you're going to learn mathematics, this is the way your grandchildren are going to learn mathematics, I don't care if you like it or not. No. Wow, they're learning differently. So let me learn about how they're learning, and let me add that and allow my beautiful daughter to flourish in this learning environment, which is anything but tyrannical. So there's a lot to learn about learning, bottom line. And for those of us that are passionate about learning, I was passionate about learning earlier in life. I hated it, and I was passionate about it. And now you can't stop me from learning. But it's because of I'm going after what I'm curious about, excited about, want to learn more about. So we can't stop learning. The question is, how do we add to the environment for people to learn as much as they can learn about things that they're passionate about? That's bottom line for me, inspired learning. So with that, I am out of time. Thank you all. Sunny, Ridish has had to leave, but thank you. Saraswati, awesome. I bless you and your daughter in your journey of mathematics. Vivek, always insightful. With that, come back next week. We're going to be talking more about the competencies. And again, this is a topic that most people have not dealt into in terms of what is a competency. What am I actually looking for in order to acknowledge it? Will be answered next week in our session next week. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say God bless. I'm going to say namaste. And I'm going to say be safe.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Peter.
Bye-bye.
Namaste. Bye.